After the big freeze this spring, the TWRA is going to be looking hard with every piece of information we have to figure out the impacts of the freeze on our wildlife populations. Our first information is probably going to come from our turkey poult surveys this summer, and then followed by the mast surveys, and then any other piece of information we can gather. We're going to be putting all of our heads together and trying to figure out exactly what we can learn from this potential damaging freeze that we had this spring.
Everybody's wondering about the mast crop this year after the big freeze, and the first thing we can tell you is we don't know. And we won't know until around August or September when we get our mast surveys in. But until then, we're going to keep an eye on it and just see how things are going. As far as deer hunting and bear hunting, if we do have a crop failure, then they're going to see a lot more movement. The deer are going to be out in the fields more instead of in the woods, and the bears are probably going to be down off the mountain, or depending on what happened with the mast crop, they could be higher if the trees weren't affected. It could be that in the higher elevations in the mountains that we may not see any repercussions from the hard freeze. The trees may not have flowered yet, and they may make good masts as normal. If it doesn't, then the bears are going to be on the move, and people are going to need to keep up their trash, their dog food, just take the normal precautions that they normally would. Deer hunters are going to see more movement in the fields. It'll probably be a good year to have a food plot to draw the deer in. The deer aren't going to have the mast in the woods to keep them from moving around so much. Food plots aren't going to help save the deer, but they are a good way to get them in one central location for hunting. Squirrels are going to be a lot more active. Probably see an increase in squirrel harvest, deer harvest, bear and turkey this year, just because it will be on the move more and more people will be able to see them out in the open.
Turkey are going to be a lot like the deer this year. They're going to be looking for the hard mast, and if it's not there, they're going to be moving farther afield. So we'll see those turkeys out and about a little bit more than on a normal year. Everyone's worried about a total mast failure, but early reports indicate that some of the higher elevation trees may not have been impacted. Also, certain species of trees that flower later in the year probably are going to be all right because the freeze hit right at the flowering time. So some species are probably going to be all right while other species are going to be hit pretty hard. Red oaks have a 2-year acorn cycle, so the acorns that were produced last year are still on the tree this year, went through the winter. They should be all right. Early indications are the red oaks are going to be okay. We are seeing other reports from the field that show that there is some acorn production out there. Some shingle oaks are producing, so we've heard. Other oaks are producing as well, so we should have some amount of production on the ground by the fall. The other issue is going to be our soft mast production, how much of our soft mast got hit and how much of our soft mast actually produced. And so especially with our bears, the soft mass that is going to be on the ground right now is going to be critical to how much movement we're going to have out of those bears.
The brood survey is conducted across the state by wildlife officers and managers during their normal routine. They make observations of the number and size of poults seen afield. This information will let us compare past year's data to see how the spring freeze may have affected productivity. The mast survey conducted this fall will be our first hard look at how the spring freeze may have affected the mast production.